Any comments on that? Comments on our August
I'll
meeting
move
minutes?
to approve the August 15th minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving those minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Let me just say that, we got a couple things kicked back from that meeting here. Parking is back on our lap. An official map moved along nicely in those 2 months. Thank you, Mark, for moving that along. Public comment. Thanks all for being here. Is anyone here not for something on the agenda? That is, you have something that's not on tonight's agenda that you'd like to address. We need to know that now if that's the case. Okay, thank you. So we have a big agenda tonight, lots on it. Comments before we ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Okay.
So moved.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
And Amy. Those in favor of tonight's agenda?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we have several things on business tonight. Hawk Ridge, official map, shared parking, and a little bit of the stuff to wrap up our evening. So it's a big agenda item. I guess we have tonight some opportunity to ask questions on a concept plan. If we have questions, provide comments if we feel like providing them, as there are no required actions on this tonight. Mr. Songer, I understand you're going to lead us in this presentation. Because we have such a big agenda, I would ask you to endeavor to keep, and I will help you to do that, to keep this portion of our meeting to 20 minutes tops.
Okay.
Thank you. Staff, anything to kick us off before we hear from our representative?
I think we would just like to remind the Planning Commission that you're here to comment on the concept plan. I believe Mr. Songer might ask you to comment on public sewer. That is not under your purview. That would be under the purview of the Board of Supervisors after he follows the development of regional impact process and submits the necessary paperwork to the board. So remember that every comment that you offer tonight is non-binding. This is a non-binding plan. It's just, you can ask any questions you might have about the plan itself, but it is non-binding comments at this point.
That's why we call it a concept plan.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
I think you got this plan here. I just
Okay.
set it on top of.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about Hawk Ridge Phase 2. I sent a memo to Amy, and she passed that around to all of you to give a brief overview of where we're at with respect to Hawk Ridge. I apologize, I put the wrong date on the plan. I put November on the plan, and it should have been October. But anyway, Hawk Ridge Phase 1, the infrastructure's been completed. We've sold a total of 7 lots up there. There are 3 homes under construction. We expect to complete the paving of Phase 1 next year. We don't do it right now because there's still a lot of construction going on as far as the homes are concerned. As far as the Hawk Ridge development, you might have seen it before we started working up there. It was filled with invasive species. We've mowed those down. You can now walk the entire site. We also worked, just so you know, with the local fire department in using the old home that was there as a training facility for a period of time until we had the house raised by an Amish contractor who actually was able to recycle most of the materials rather than taking it to landfill. So recently, at Amy's suggestion, I thank her for it, had the site flown. We had the whole area flown actually from Hawk Ridge over to Harvest Fields, just so you can get a feeling for what the lay of the land is there and what currently exists on that. So maybe Amy, you could show us that video, please. That's just a high-tech drone. Gentleman here I came to know through John Sepp, my engineer, is here with us tonight. Just gives you an overview of the overall topography. You're looking there at Springfield Commons, part of it, and what in general exists in this area. It's a nice time of the year to fly with the with all the leaves turning and everything. And as you can see, the development near Springfield Commons is generally R1, R2. This is the Gates development, which has been constructed in the last 10 years down near the Harvest Field site. Here's the Harvest Field site here, and we're a little bit to the west of that. So overall, the general topography of our land and the land in this general area, it's pretty similar. There are occasionally some steep slopes, but generally speaking, the slopes are under 10% in the areas that have been developed. Okay, so maybe now, Amy, we go to the as-is plan. Oh, okay. So, John, you want to say a few words about the as-is plan and what we've done in accordance with your current ordinance for this area?
Yes, I'm John Sepp from Planetary Engineering. Good evening, I'm John Sepp from Planetary Engineering. You all have the existing conditions plans, which shows the property basically in 3 tax parcels. This proposal would be subdividing the eastern portion of the project, 33 acres, into rural preservation type lots using the newly adopted ordinances for the ag zone. And you will also see a yield plan, which is required by ordinance, which shows how many 60,000 square foot lots could be developed on the tract, and that is the basis for the density that you are permitted to develop. The plans you have there shows the existing topography, existing roads, and limits of the existing tax parcels. There will be one lot that will be subdivided off on the western portion of the development, off of which would be east of Academy Street, and that would be the one exempt lot, which would be created. I think you're allowed to have 3 exempt lots now in the ag zone. It's 2 or 3. Right, and that lot is not included in the open space calculations for the development.
So basically, we want to talk about the concept plan. You all received a copy of that, and as John indicated, everything was done in conformance with the current zoning. Phase 2 is independent of Phase 1. It does not connect with Phase 1, so there'll be no traffic from Phase 2 that will go through Phase 1 or Springfield Commons or Academy Street. All traffic will be served by Tory Lane. The intent is to serve the entire development with public sewage, but there are lots 106, 107, 108, 109, and 110 on the conceptual plan that are outside the regional growth boundary. Okay, and as Amy said, that's not your purview to deal with that. That's the supervisors, and we will be meeting with the supervisors in the near future. This conceptual plan totals about 32 acres of land. Approximately 70% of this tract will be open space under the current zoning. And again, all the lots that are shown, proposed lots, conform. When I bought the land, I wasn't aware there was a former parkland agreement with the previous developer that required him to give 0.55 acres of land or $27,000 to the township. That agreement was not on record, but the .55 acre requirement has passed on to us. I'm proposing that we handle that with a hike bikeway that's shown on the conceptual plan that would go from Emma Court to Street A in Phase 2. It'd be a 20-foot wide easement, and then we'd also grant an easement at the Torrey Lane Street A intersection that a hike bikeway could be constructed down to tie into the Springfield Commons hike bikeway, which we built when we developed Springfield Commons. That hike bikeway parallels Torrey Lane and Loop Road. The total land area, if we gave a 20-foot easement with total .42 acres, also lot 6, which is within Phase 1 of Hawk Ridge, and that's a flag lot. We would propose when we build the driveway or street to serve lot 6 that we actually include the hike bikeway within that street cross section. I mean, typically a hike bikeway is 5-6 feet wide, so if we made a 20-foot wide street, there'd be plenty of room there for a hike bikeway. And then that hike bikeway could be continued in the future within the easement that we would provide, but the township would have to build that. That's what I'm proposing, but here again, we're open to other considerations. Just so you know, in these trying times, it costs about $1,000 to $1,400 per lineal foot of street to build street and infrastructure in any development. So it's very expensive, and a typical 80-foot lot costs $50,000 to $55,000 just for infrastructure. That doesn't include the engineering, the land costs, review fees, street trees, legal fees, realtor commissions, etc. So it's very hard and very expensive to develop land these days, which is why you don't see very many subdivisions underway. As I said earlier, the land to the east of us is typically, it's the older part of Boalsburg. It's R1 and R2 zoned, and it has smaller lots and older homes, but more affordable homes. Springfield Commons, which is our development to the east, just to give you an idea, the lots in there, since it was a PRD, were 3,000 to 7,000 square feet in size. They appear to be larger because between all the lots is a 15-foot wide common open space. The lot size in Hawk Ridge, Phase 1, which is R1 zoned, they're all 10,000 square feet and up, and have about 80 foot of frontage. And the reason I mention that is there is a need for R1 zone developments throughout the center region, and currently I'm not aware of any other R1 developments under construction in Harris Township. And I'm not here to apply for a rezoning, but I want to make you aware of what's around here, and if you thought about it, if there was an opportunity and you thought this land could be rezoned, we'd be willing to work with you. The last R1 development that I'm aware of in Harris Township was done in Kaywood, and then that was done by a single builder, and it sold out very quickly. And is Erin here, my realtor? I guess she didn't make it. She was going to say a few words about what's going on in the center region. Anybody have any comments on what I've said so far, or questions?
This drawing that you handed out, you show the zoning boundaries, where the R1, the ag, and the natural areas district is. Is all of this proposed development in the ag district?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the drawing you just handed out tonight, it has a road coming in, you have a couple different concept roads, a Street A, a Street B, and
Yeah.
two different drawings, and this one has a little different road.
Well,
What's that?
don't pay any attention to the street layout on that. That was done some time ago, and I forgot to ask my engineer to update that plan. That plan is more for just your information on the zoning in nearby to our development and the topography. Okay, so I wanted you to get a feel for that. There is sewer currently up Torrey Lane. We obviously have sewer in phase one of our development. All of Springfield Commons is sewered and has public water. We would expect our total development to have public water and underground utilities. But don't pay any attention to that street layout for our development there.
Or is it, in relationship to this drawing, where is the Benjamin Heights?
That's
Development.
that area right off Torrey Lane.
So is that that's part of this development then?
Oh, yeah. It's this area right here. That's what we
Okay.
called Benjamin Heights originally. And it runs up to this tree line here, Ken. Runs
All
up
right.
to this tree line. So these are the lots that are outside the regional growth boundary.
All right. So there is, and that, as I recall, Benjamin Heights does or does not have sewer?
Now, Benjamin Heights has sewer because that land was assessed for sewage years ago, and we thought initially it couldn't have sewer service, even though the sewer fronts the property, but that was changed, and COG did approve sewer service for that.
Okay, so there is for just that one parcel?
Yeah, so basically, that's what I'm saying, that, which is really up to this tree line, is in the sewer service area, but the 5 lots plus the open space lot is not in the sewer service area.
Okay. And, was there an approved plan for that? For that Benjamin Heights, did it have an approved plan or not?
One time it had a preliminary plan approved when we thought it was on lot sewage.
Okay, all right.
And that plan has long ago expired. And
Okay.
furthermore, since that, the new zoning ordinance that was passed this past spring takes control really over how this land can be developed.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, there's our presentation. I don't know, is there anyone, some of the property owners that I've sold lots to in phase one are here. Would any of you like to?
Let's wait to have comments, please. from the
Okay,
planning commission
all right,
first.
all right.
Anyone else have a comment or question from Mr. Songer at this time? Okay,
I have a,
Jeff, please.
this is the concept that you want to do, right?
That's what we can do under the current ordinance.
Okay,
And that can only be built as it is, as I just said, if we get sewer service
if you
for
get a
those
lot,
last 3 to 4 lots.
But
If we
this is-
can't get it, then the estate lot gets bigger essentially, and
the other plan with the bigger lots on it. I understand, but what's going to, if you were to get approval for the sewer extension, what stops you from adding more lots to this?
because it can't comply with the zoning ordinance. This is the maximum we can do.
So
on this
the
site.
70% of Greenway or whatever it is,
basically
this
it.
is the best you can do.
Conservation
Okay.
design.
Yeah, so what you're gonna see, I mean, this is just a fact. What you're gonna see, if this is what we have to do, and that's all we can do under the current ordinance, what you're gonna see is another Aspen Heights, a Hunt Ridge Manor, just, high-end, very expensive homes. That's what you're gonna see. You're not gonna see even homes like we've built in, or has been built in our Springfield Commons or Hawk Ridge Phase 1. They're gonna be bigger homes, more expensive homes, because the lots have to be more expensive to pay for all the infrastructure and land costs.
When you say pay for all the infrastructure, I mean, but you won't, on those bigger lots, you won't be putting in sewer. So that would.
No, we're gonna put sewer in, what was just
on
asked.
the lots that you would be going to have to do septic. So that cost wouldn't be part of it. You'd still have to build the roads and put water in and utilities underground. But sewer wouldn't be there, right? Because they would all be on septic.
Well, if we can get septic approval, these regulations regarding septic systems have changed dramatically, and what used to be able to do with on-lot, you might not be able to do. So I would have to go in and have it tested, but and I did have tests done up there, and what was approvable not that many years ago, like 3 to 5 years ago, was not approvable today. So I can't assume that those lots that are outside the regional growth boundary could have septic service because of the change in regulations.
Okay. And, online, any members on our Zoom connection have a question at this point or comment?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So there are there some people who would like to speak to this? Again, we got a few minutes. Please, come to the microphone if you would.
I don't have the map here, but I've walked that land, and I used to live up Tory Lane, and I've walked that land, and I find it difficult to have a road go in to serve that land with less than 25% slope. Yeah. How does that road come in?
We already have it designed, and my engineer will take care of that. We'll meet all the township road grades. It's already been designed because, as Kent mentioned, the preliminary plan we had approved, at one point had submitted, had a road design that met the township standards.
Yeah. Well, where is the road?
What's shown on the plan there?
Yeah.
We can share with you to look at.
There's Tory Lane right there.
Yeah, but he said that road is not an accurate representation at this point. There's Tory Lane.
So if you want that
There is a spring down there that goes here. Its origin is a spring, and most of the
If I can answer that, the plan, we did not design the Benjamin Heights plan, but I'm familiar with it. We needed to get a DEP stream crossing permit for that, which was obtained, and will have to be reobtained for this project. We'll have to meet all the township regulations or the plan will be approved, and we'll be able to do that.
So thank you for this concern. It sounds like there may be there are engineering workarounds, if you will. Other comments or questions on this topic at this time?
We did have a question from a person on Zoom.
Okay.
Mr. Sonner, she was just wondering what the average lot size would be, what you're proposing.
Basically, half acre minimum lot size. A little bit, some of them are a little bit under, but and some are over, but they average half an acre.
Average lot size, if you didn't hear that. Okay.
Nothing much under a half an acre. 0.4 to 5, I think, is in that range.
Thank you, Andy. Mr. Songer, looks like that we have one more person here to comment, coming in behind you. Use the microphone, please.
This is my realtor, Aaron Whitmer. So, Aaron, you want to say a few words about the need for affordable lots in State College area?
Sure. So
I'm part of Tom Songer's real estate team, and so I'm just here to lend a real estate perspective. And the center region really needs more housing in general. We work with people all the time, and finding housing across the State College Area School District, it's not easy for a lot of people, but especially building lots. So Harris Township only has 13% of available building lots in the region, and that's only 6 lots. So what Mr. Songer would like to do is have a neighborhood that would provide more housing for more people, that would be obtainable by more people. He doesn't want to add another Stearns Crossing, Laurel Hills, Bear Meadows. Those are all lovely neighborhoods, but his thoughts are more like a Kaywood North, for example, that would provide more housing for people in our community. Thank you.
But we've been working.
Thank you.
I'm looking at density as a group, right?
Yeah, this is actually a good timing with some of the work of the Planning Commission on our work plan in terms of residential regulations overview. Mr. Songer, thank you. I think we have one more comment, and then we're going to wrap this up.
This is very simple. I just thought, could you just tell us the sequence going forth of what happens with this?
Concept plan, I'm going to rely on staff to be more eloquent on that
Just a couple
involved
steps.
question.
Yeah, so Mr. Songer will be presenting this exact same presentation in November to the Board of Supervisors. I'll ask Mark to speak a little bit about the DRI process, because if Mr. Songer were to request sewer, there's a whole other process he has to follow. He can't be asking the supervisors for that in November unless he gets his DRI together by then. So Mark can explain that. And I will also just add one thing. The parkland that you're proposing, I think we've told you this a couple of times now, you can't give us parkland for phase 1 and phase 2, so you'll have to work that out with the Parks and Rec Committee.
The idea is to give you the amount of land via a hike bikeway, which you asked me to do before.
We asked for land
on
in
another
phase 1.
lot. Let
In
me
phase
just
1.
say, the phase 1 lands extend up, and it's on the subdivision plan, it's approved and recorded. The phase 1 land extends up past what we just looked at as Benjamin Heights.
So we'd be happy to, again, have that conversation with you. The Parks and Rec Committee's had that conversation with you several times now. Fee in lieu is always an option. Thank you, Mr. Songer. Mark, would you please talk about the DRI process?
Yeah, the development of regional impact process is the process you need to go through to have public sewer extended to an area outside of the existing growth boundary and sewer service area. So what it would require is Mr. Songer would need to approach the Board of Supervisors and first ask them if they are willing to consider a request. It doesn't mean, are you going to approve my request, but are you willing to consider one? If they say yes, then Mr. Songer can go ahead and prepare a development of regional impact that is defined within an agreement that all 6 Center Region municipalities adopted back in 2013. It includes criteria that he would need to address and information he'd need to provide. Once he brought that back to the township, first actually you'd have to give it to our agency to verify it's complete. We would then forward it on to the township to let them know that it's ready to be reviewed. At that point, the board could then review it and decide whether or not they're going to send it back to the Planning Commission for comment, or if they're just going to review it on their own. But regardless, once the township makes a decision, if they choose to support the request, it would then go forward for regional review. And at that point, it would need to be voted upon positively by 5 of the 6 Center Region municipalities, one of which being Harris Township, in order for it to be approved. Another matter is that if public sewer were extended, Mr. Songer would also need to enter into a developer's agreement with the township to agree to develop what he's proposing for the sewer extension, to ensure that the development that is being proposed is what ends up being built. So that is the general overall process for a development of regional impact.
Okay. That's a lot. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming on this concept plan. Appreciate your time tonight. Let's move on, please, to item B, the official map. And we've had a good committee working on this. People from Parks and Rec have helped with official map. We've had several planning commission members on the official map committee, and glad to bring it to the group for the next step in the process. Mark, you gonna take this away?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, this was a several-month process that involved a subcommittee comprised of several planning commission members as well as Parks and Rec advisory committee members. And what the goal was here was to put together an official map that wasn't going to constitute a wish list of potential facilities, but rather something that hopefully would be more realistic to implement in the future. So what they did is they went through the process of reviewing the existing map, looking at the facilities that were on there. They eliminated a number that had already been completed through other developments that had taken place over the last 14 years or so since this map was last adopted. They also took some off that were no longer deemed feasible. And then they also went about a public input process back over the spring and summer this year, put out some online survey options, and got a lot of feedback from the public on what they'd like to see and what type of facilities they utilize on a regular basis or would like to utilize. So what you have in your packet tonight is the first official map that the township had adopted back in 2008, with the yellow sheet being the key that explains what all those facilities were. And then the proposed official map that we got all on one piece of paper, which is nice. You have the legend and the map all in one, so no need to refer back to a second document. But as you'll see, the majority of the facilities shown on this map are proposed bicycle and pedestrian facilities. That was a big point of what people are looking to see. Based on the survey, a lot of folks are saying they want more connectivity, more walkability, and they pointed out locations in the township where they'd like to have those connections made. So you'll see a lot of those here on the official map. There are two potential future public parking lots here in the village. It ties back to the village parking committee, some pedestrian improvements that folks felt were needed out along Bowl Avenue, and then two park expansions for two existing parks. So the map is definitely, I think, a lot more streamlined, but as I mentioned earlier, the goal here was to make it more implementable moving forward. So what we're looking for tonight is feedback from the Planning Commission. We also are going to need to go get feedback from Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, since we show parks and other similar park facilities here on the map. But ultimately, if the Planning Commission is satisfied with this draft official map, we'd be looking to have you make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding its approval.
Bob had a question.
I was just gonna get the ball started. Might as well make the motion to approve and to endorse it.
I second it.
Do we have a chance to speak?
You do, yes. I'll see if there are any other comments, or any comments to start off with from planning commission members. And certainly we'll use the official map committee to enhance that as well.
I have one question.
Please.
On item 13, Earlstown Road to London Hall Road, shared use facility. I remember going down to London Hall. We talked about that at a subdivision plan last year, and that I thought that the developer felt there was some grade constraints that would stop that. I don't know if we.
Yeah, I remember Rich brought that up at one of the meetings, is could that go in there? I don't remember what that limitation was.
I think one thing to keep in mind is anything shown on the official map is not necessarily an exact alignment. It's an approximation. I don't know if that might have been a concern with the other development that was being reviewed. I think it was the Kaywood North Estate lots. I don't know if perhaps the grade would be more feasible to the east. It's possible, but the bottom line is this is an opportunity for the township to work with developers in the future to maybe negotiate for these facilities and find a way forward if one exists.
Diane, please.
Diane, can you come to the microphone?
She's really the person who's speaking.
Okay.
Okay.
Come to the microphone and identify yourself, please. Yeah,
Yes.
oh, I know. It feels stuffy, doesn't it?
I know.
Sorry.
Kathy Flood, I live right back here. Question on the one area that is behind our property and behind yours, the township, that's marked as possible parking. Is that going to be paved?
I mean, it's still, again, it's just shown on the map as a future possible location for parking. None of that's been discussed yet, if it would be paved. I think that's something the supervisors would have to want to talk about.
Because when I understood when Anna Smith sold that property to the township, that it couldn't be paved because of drainage and water issues there. So I just wanted to make sure that's not going to be a problem, because we've had some major problems with the new construction that was next door to our property, so I don't want anything happening in the back either.
Stormwater runoff particularly you're talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, and we would have to, if we were to develop that in the future into a parking lot, we would have to do the stormwater management plan and take that all into consideration.
all right, thank you.
Quick question, how large is that lot? I mean, right now, I'm looking at the map, that if things are little blobs.
Let's see if,
The lot behind the township office?
Right.
let's see if Mark can pull that up.
It's gonna take me a minute here, the mouse is not going to cooperate.
While he's looking up that figure, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the legal role of the official map.
Mm-hmm.
And I served on the planning commission for 25 years, and I don't remember what the legal role of the official map is.
So let me first give you the acreage of that. It is 0.2 acres in size. That is the size of the lot here behind the township.
It's not very big.
Not very big, no. So the legal role of the official map is whenever a developer proposes development on a piece of property that is impacted by a facility shown on the official map, the township has the right at that point to begin negotiating with the developer to try to acquire the improvement or the land necessary to install the improvement. If the developer, during that negotiation process, basically gives the township a year to act upon a land development plan. It delays the time period. Normally, township has to act upon a plan within 90 days, but this would stretch it out an additional year to provide the township with time to see if they can get that facility, negotiate to get either the land or the facility itself. So once that year expires, if the applicant's not willing to work with the township, at that point their plan can move forward regardless of what the official map shows. But it really is a mechanism of informing the public of what the township is interested in doing. So hopefully anybody who's proposing a development in Harris Township will have looked at the official map to see if there's something shown on their property, and then anticipated how they might be able to come in and provide that improvement during the process and make it go more smoothly.
And in the case of the township lot, and there are a couple pedestrian improvements that we put on there, our thought process in including them on the official map is we have some dedicated funding within our budget, the special projects fund. So we felt that if the supervisors at some point in the future said, oh, I'd really like to do the Main Street pedestrian improvement, they can point to that when they're spending the money so that the residents of the township know that we're not just pulling projects sort of out of our hat. We have these on a map somewhere and they're planned.
And another thing to point out too, an official map, the municipality is not legally obligated to actually put any of these things in. It's just a document to try to hopefully acquire some of these facilities over time, but there's nothing that says the township has to do it. If they decide after looking at it more closely it's not feasible, township could certainly just state we're okay with the development as is without it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the process of using the survey provided 200, give or take, people, mostly residents of Harris Township, to provide feedback on this and to draw in pathways and other features. So it was a good cross section of input that we got. And Mark, thanks for honchoing that project. It tested your GIS skills a little, or your survey skills. There we go. Anything else on official map? We want to just recommend a motion need or just a recommendation up to the...
You already made a motion.
Excuse
Bob
me,
has
I'm
a
sorry,
motion.
you did, Bob, and it's been seconded. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this before we call a vote on this motion to move this official map up to the Board of Supervisors? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. carries, thank you. All righty. Parking, a busy parking in the village committee met, and supervisors have weighed in. You can read their comments in the minutes and staff feedback as well to that, and we're gonna take another crack at some more refinements to that here tonight.
So essentially, this is coming back to you because when staff was putting together the ordinance language for the supervisors meeting in September, we noted one problem with the shared parking and the distance. And it's really only on the east side of the village. We don't have a robust pedestrian network on the east side of the village. So if a property in this block wanted to share with a property on Bull Avenue, there isn't a pedestrian network. There's no sidewalk to get people back and forth. So we brought that up with the board because we were wondering, there isn't much street lighting over here and there's no sidewalk. Is that really then a danger? So the supervisors talked about it, and they thought it would be best if we sent this back to you guys to consider either looking at alternate distances, and Mark did put some mapping together that shows some lengths, or, and it's something we talked about at the board meeting, you could keep it at the 1,000 feet, but you could say that you have to provide a pedestrian access so that the property owner that wants to share parking with another property, it would be self-limiting, right? If somebody decides they don't want to have the capital to put into that, they wouldn't do it and they wouldn't share the parking. So I did speak with, we have members of our village parking committee here tonight. We have one member who wasn't able to attend, and she called me before the meeting. And she said she's very much in support of leaving it that the property owner has to provide the pedestrian access and leaving it at 1,000 feet. But I will pull up Mark's map if I can find it in my email so you guys can see that, and we'll share that on the screen too. Okay. So Mark, you want to walk through the mapping here?
Yeah, so what we did is we took 2 points in the village to do the distance measurements from. The first is out at Tennis Alley and Main Street. It's the yellow crosses here, the yellow plus signs, and then right here in front of the township building. So the blue line represents 500 feet from those starting points, and then the orange is 500 to 750 feet, and then the red is the 750 to 1,000 feet. You can also see that the sidewalk network that exists here within the village and out along Bowl Avenue, actually all the way up into Liberty Hill now I'm looking at it, is shown. And we also illustrated the location of the bridge down here by the steakhouse and Bowlesburg Car Company, where there are no pedestrian facilities. So again, just a basic map to show how far it is from, you know, one point in the village to another if you were going to allow that shared parking to be up to 1,000 feet away, and how some of these areas east of the edge of the village here, east of the township offices, would be inaccessible from a pedestrian point of view and would probably be difficult to ever achieve in a financially viable way. So, oh yeah, and then the red properties down there in the village are the ones that don't have, or in the diamond are the ones that don't have the ability to provide parking. We just pointed those out so you could see some of the distances from them.
They don't have any off-street parking.
Well, I mean, why can't you build the sidewalks?
Why?
The township built the sidewalks?
Why not? I mean, it looks to me like a really broken map of sidewalks.
So I will say this about the village sidewalks. The Board of Supervisors started in 2018 a sidewalk replacement project within the village, because the village was laid out 200 years ago. We have areas where it's not possible to put a sidewalk in. I point to our next door neighbor. We have areas where the street trees are 200 years old and they've heaved up the sidewalks. Concrete is very expensive. We've done the little strip right in front of the post office this year, and that was over $15,000. So putting in sidewalks sounds like a great idea, but I don't know how financially feasible that would be for the township to do in the near future because of the way prices are.
Sidewalks are being completed in front of the First National Bank, which is going to be Bowlesburg Auto, and it's not $15,000. So that part will be completed. I don't know why. I mean, that's a really high number. And maybe it's because, and it's still handicap access is on the driveway too. So you got a bad contractor. But you can get it done for a lot less money than that.
Yeah, we got 3 quotes.
Yeah. But it just seems like something that should be on our worksheet to try to accomplish that.
Well, that would be a question for the policymakers, right? That's the Board of Supervisors, so. Certainly within the realm of possibility in the future. I'm not sure in the near future, but in the future.
Anyone from the parking committee want to comment on this? Seems like the planning commission has wrestled with this a few times and he doesn't have other issues.
I would.
Bob, can you go to the microphone?
I think that, I have to admit, coming from College Township, where we're pushing for sidewalks a lot, I don't want that to influence your decision, but if I am pro sidewalk, but I am. I think that this is a goal. This is kind of like a master plan goal. Whether it's expensive, we all know that. Is that the number that we're getting right now? Everything is inflated. Will it come back? I don't know. But I do know that there are a lot of people that come down off the hill that want to walk through the town, and I agree with your assessment. It might be difficult to build it there. I think we have to look at reality and see how it can be built. But I think as a goal, I think our committee, and I'm speaking for one, two, I would like to suggest that we keep this as a goal, as a planning commission goal. Something to try to strive to meet. It may take years, that's okay, but it's something that we can keep in front of us and judge as there are changes in the dynamics of cost and accessibility. I really strongly believe that east connection is really, from the people that I've talked to that come downtown from the 50s community, they love to walk across the street and walk downtown, and that connectivity would be important. So if the restaurant or any of the developers along that route come in for a plan, then we can at least discuss with them whether, does it in the ordinance, Todd, that they, land development plan, they have to provide sidewalks? It's not, is that?
Not typically. I mean, there are certain things within the subdivision and land development ordinance that do trigger sidewalks. That's more typical
it's not.
of residential development than it is commercial development. You know, the village commercial zoning district, those are newer regulations, and we require pedestrian means out by the corridor road, and we also require pedestrian accesses from parking lot to parking lot within the village commercial. But it's one of those things that we have to look at what's proposed.
Sure,
to
absolutely.
see.
I understand. And I think that this could be a, just like the map that you just looked at, as a guideline, something that the township can talk to people that are doing work along that corridor and suggest maybe connectivity. So, you know, Jeff, I strongly agree with your caution there. We ought to keep it in line. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does it make sense to move to add this to the official map?
Oh, perfect.
Sidewalk connectivity, I mean, one more small tinker to the,
I mean,
that we'd have to go get approval from the,
I would say that you could add it, right? But then we're going to tread back into the territory we were in with the last official map, which was we put things in there that were not likely to happen because they were not likely to be developed. I will say the supervisors are looking at a sidewalk, a long-range sidewalk plan for the village. That's something that could be looked at. We'd have to look at the engineering to see what it would cost. There's some challenges from the car company up in terms of putting that sidewalk in
Sure,
with the
sure.
bridge, and then also some challenges with the land over here, but that's something, again, it's not off the table, right? But it's up to the decision makers, it's the supervisors. And so they would have to talk about it in the future. I think the question that's more germane tonight is, you can leave the shared parking distance at 1,000 feet and just require that if you're gonna do it, you have to provide pedestrian access in some way. And we would have to flesh out in the ordinance what that pedestrian access means. It's safe pedestrian access, street lighting, that kind of thing. And that's, I think, fine, because, right, this isn't something that everybody in the village is gonna use.
That's right.
This isn't something that, I mean, I think have we had more than one property in the whole history of the village use this before?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, the regulation came about, right, because the Heritage Museum wanted to share parking with the steakhouse. So, and it's exactly 66 feet from the Heritage Museum to the steakhouse, which is how it got 66 feet. So, I mean, there's been like one property that's done this in all the time that we've been here. So I think it's realistic to say, you know, you can set it at whatever distance,
Yeah.
but I think it's realistic to say, like, we understand the concern of the pedestrian access, and then ask the supervisors to consider adding this into the sidewalk plan for the village in the future.
Well, that perspective is really helpful, Amy, thank you. So, please, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some questions. I think I may have brought this up before. It doesn't relate to the sidewalks themselves. It's just the parking lots. Generally, if we have required parking, it has to be paved and it has to be lit. Am I correct on that?
It only has to be paved if it gets to the requirement that you have to have 5 or more spaces.
Okay, so if it's 5 or more spaces, and if it's less than 5, then it could be unpaved.
It can be stone.
Okay. What about lighting? Is there a requirement for lighting of parking areas?
I think lighting is generally left to the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. I think there's a section, and I'd have to check to be sure, because we don't do non-residential very often. I think there is a section that says that the Board of Supervisors can require lighting, but I don't know that it automatically requires lighting.
Okay. Because normally, like if a development comes in and they're proposing parking on their own site, they normally pave it, they provide the ADA parking as necessary, and they usually have to put lighting on it and meet the lighting ordinance as well.
Well, our lighting regulations state what you can't do. You can't have light go off the property, you can't have the source of the light be seen from off the property. Honestly, I think it's more of a liability issue for the property owner if you're having a parking lot with 50 spaces, that if you don't have lighting, you're gonna get sued than it is anything. So
Okay.
maybe that's why our regulations, if they don't have that requirement, it's just self-policing.
Okay. Well, I mean, I assume for instance, the property, the development by the Bowl Mansion I assume that will be a lit parking
Yes.
lot. But it wasn't necessary, we didn't require that it be a lit parking lot?
I don't know that we did. Like I said, I'd have to go back and look at the regulations.
Okay. Because that's to me a bigger issue, bigger than the sidewalks, because we do have, yes, to the east side there we have some issues, but to the rest of the district, we do have some sidewalks. Some of them are probably lit, some probably not. But if you have to negotiate parking spaces with another property owner, it has to, I assume, meet our parking regulations, and it has to be something that property owner can provide. When they share it, they can't share parking that's required for their own use. Is that correct?
No, they would have to have the sum total of what they're required to do on their property as well as what they're agreeing to provide to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. So I do think, I think there's other issues besides just the sidewalk, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
And so I'm fine with what the staff was proposing earlier, is to go ahead and just leave it at 1,000 feet. That seems a little long, far for me, but I'm okay with that. But but I think there'll be some complications as far as working out the details with other property owners and having it recorded, and it goes, you know, it goes with the land, and that's something they'd have to agree to, you know, into the indefinite future, so. So I do think it's more complicated than just whether or not we have sidewalks or not.
And I think along those lines, something I would point out, the conversations we've had so far, mostly at the Board of Supervisors level, included the fact that the property owner would be responsible for putting the sidewalk on their property. I can't imagine there's a property owner out there who's gonna say, sure, I'll put in a sidewalk. They're gonna say, I'll agree and I'll enter into legal agreement with you, but you're responsible for the cost and the actual installation of the sidewalk. So nobody should assume that the property owner is gonna be responsible for that.
So are these red lots, are those the only lots that don't have the ability to provide parking?
Yeah, those are the ones where the entire building basically covers the majority of the property to the point there is no way, without having to tear down part of the building, to be able to provide a parking space. Other properties have limited parking, but these have literally no parking and no ability at all.
Okay.
I think Diana.
Yeah, I'm just checking the room here, please.
This is embarrassing. I was on the parking committee, but you have brought up some interesting questions that makes me wonder. We have not regulated a size, the number of vehicles. So what would stop somebody that has 7 acres, as we know, there are some properties downtown that do, 7 acres turning a couple acres into a parking lot? Did we discuss that?
Well, it would be impossible in a residential zoning district to turn a large property into just a parking lot, because that use would not be allowed in a residential zoning district. A commercial parking lot would not be a use that's allowed in a residential parking lot. For smaller lots, the things that are going to limit the number of spaces that can be provided include lot coverage, total impervious coverage, setbacks that the parking spaces themselves have from the property lines. If it's going to be a larger parking lot that might have 8 or 10 spaces, and not all of those 8 or 10 spaces can be directly accessed via a public street, there would have to be some kind of travel aisle to get to the spaces. That's going to take up a considerable amount of space within the property. So, as I mentioned earlier, some of this will be self-policing. It'll be self-limiting. Most properties won't be able to provide more than 1 or 2 spaces in total when you're looking at the village, I would guess, and very few, if any, lots within the village will be able to provide a large number of spaces.
So how far on Church Street does the village district go?
Chambers Alley.
You can see there on the map, that blue shaded area, that's the
Yeah.
extent,
You're
right?
Okay.
Yep.
But, so you're saying that the natural size of the lots will control?
That's one of the limiting factors. Some of the setbacks and other things are also limiting factors.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
My question is, this has been a lot of work and a lot of discussion. What problem does this solve?
It's a good question.
I don't know what's different. So I just, and I don't mean to be funny or ironic. I really think maybe I don't know why we're doing this.
So I'll start, and then I'll let Mark or Todd or anybody on the committee jump in. That was something actually Cheryl chuckled, because that's something that Cheryl had brought up at some of our village parking committee meetings. What we have now, we have a historic village, and we have some properties in that historic village that have limited availability to provide parking on them, right? And so we have people that maybe want to come in and do a use, and they can't provide the 8 parking spaces they have to provide. So one of the discussion pieces that the village parking committee had throughout this whole process was there isn't any relief right now written into our ordinance beyond this shared parking distance, which was very specifically for the Heritage Museum when they did this in the 80s. So the idea is not that I'm going to open up a business at 224 East Main Street and I'm going to share with 304 East Main Street all of my parking. The idea is I'm going to open up a business at 224 East Main Street and I need 8 parking spaces and I can provide maybe 7 on site. So I'm going to see if I can share with someone else so I get that one space that I need so I can open up my business at 224 East Main Street. Right? So it provides a modicum of relief to that property owner. It doesn't provide, me the ability to locate all of my parking somewhere else. We also, I think one of the things we talked about is that the nature of businesses have changed. We have a business on the Diamond, the dog groomer, the dog groomer is a drop-off business. They have 2 employees. You drop your dog off at 7:30 in the morning. You pick your dog up at 11:30. You drop your dog off at 11:30. Pick your dog up at 3:30. So if they need parking spaces for their 2 employees, is there an opportunity, because they have no off-street parking available to them, is there an opportunity to locate that off-street parking on another lot in the village that has different business hours than them? Doesn't mind because they have enough space for 2 spaces on their lot. So again, it's just about, in my eyes, it's just about providing some modicum of relief. The properties around the Diamond are very concerning because they really can't, according to what our solicitor has said, they really can't change their uses from what they are now because they have no off-street parking available, so they can never meet the off-street parking regulations. So giving them relief, I think, was at the crux of a lot of our discussions, was how do we actually help them, because that's financially devaluing their property to a certain extent, because they're saying you can only stay as what the use is that you are now, right? So maybe this won't get used a ton, maybe it will get used more than we think, but I don't think it hurts. I'm a big one for tools in a toolbox, and I don't think it hurts to put this tool in the toolbox, because I think it could help somebody in the long run. And again, those properties around the Diamond, like we've said, are problematic because of the fact that they don't have any off-street parking available to them.
So my understanding of what you just said is that the driver behind it is to give some flexibility for essentially the Diamond businesses.
The Diamond businesses, but it would be extended to everybody within the village, right? And the village commercial properties could share. So it's not just those businesses, but probably the ones that are going to use it are the ones around the Diamond, I would imagine. I don't see, because the lots get larger when you get to towards the sort of ends of the village. The lots down here are a little bit bigger than the lots on the western side of the village. So I think you're going to see more of the ones that are in this, we call the village commercial core, just for fun. In that area, I think you're going to see those folks are going to be the ones that are going to be trying to find a way to make this work for them.
So by having this new strategy, there'll be more flexibility for businesses on the Diamond, and so there may be more businesses on the Diamond?
There could be, yeah. I mean, depending, we have lot coverage, maximum impervious coverage, other regulations that also make things, again, because we have a 200-year-old village, and that's kind of what makes it a little self-limiting, right? You can't bring in maybe a large, I'm going to say record store because I'm from the 90s, I like a record store, but you can't bring in a large, Tower Records and place it in the middle of the Diamond because it's never going to fit or work. So, and please, Todd or Mark, I've chimed in a lot, so please.
We're used to it. That's the glasses half full part of the conversation. That I'm here apparently for the glasses half empty part of the conversation. One of the things we've talked about internally a lot in talking about all this is what this could end up being is just a way of meeting the ordinance on paper and not really having any practical effect on parking in the village. Because using Amy's example, if we opened a business here and had to locate one space no more than 1,000 feet away, we could find somebody 1,000 feet away that's going to provide that space or two. Nobody in the world's going to go to it. Nobody in the world's going to park in it, at least not for our business. So in one sense, we're meeting the technical requirement of the ordinance, but we're not really solving any problem because that person's going to park on the street, or they're going to park wherever there's an available parking space somewhere else. If we pave our lot out back here, that's a good example. If the required parking is 1,000 feet away and this is closer and there's space available, that's where they're going to park.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I'll just comment that, this was just one of the things that came out of the parking committee. There's a whole bunch of issues that need to be worked on, including the township providing, public parking.
Mm-hmm.
And as the township already does, I forget, you counted them a month or two ago. We have a lot of on-street parking that when I say we, the township already provides, and then it does get used. And will continue to get used, and I think that's, again, we're putting on the official map some other areas that we think we can get some public parking. And I still think one of the ultimate things that we may need to do for lots that can't, or, it's economically not feasible for them to provide parking on their own lot, is maybe have them pay some type of a fee to the township as a way of being able to compensate for what the township is providing as parking. Because, like you say, that one space that's 1,000 feet away, cumulatively, it'll be used by someone else maybe, and not by the business that contracted for it. But I mean, if we can work on all these things, maybe cumulatively, we'll have adequate parking throughout the whole district. So I think it's just kind of a matter of getting all these pieces, and this is just what we're talking about tonight, is one piece of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I'm feeling a little stymied here. I mean, I think the 1,000 feet we talked about a lot. I haven't heard a lot of change or rationale to really wrestle that bear again. And the, asking the, if shared parking is gonna be provided, asking the property owner to install the pedestrian access makes sense, as impractical as that may be, but they can work out deals with who they're sharing with on their own.
Yeah, I mean, not every parking is it's not gonna work for every single property.
Right.
Maybe something else we do, maybe the public parking will help another property.
Right.
So.
Of course, you're not gonna put in sidewalk and lighting for one spot that's 1,000 feet away. I mean, then you're still not opening the business. So I'm not sure that it's solving the problem.
But again, it's not going to be used by every business, right? So if you're at the Diamond, you can go 1,000 feet and you can find sidewalks and streetlights.
Yes, but it doesn't then meet the requirement of having lit sidewalk from the contracted space that's 1,000 feet away.
No, if you're on the Diamond to the west side, you can meet that. The sidewalk network goes to Tennis Alley on that side, and there are streetlights that whole way. It's very much only problematic at this side of the village, because we sort of pass the township building, we lose the sidewalks, and past the township building, it's very dark, we lose the streetlights. I walked one night a couple weeks ago from Kelly's back through town up to the Main Street and then back through town. It's very dark in that alley back there, and that's an alley, of course. And it's very dark out here. Past the township building, if you go east towards the Bullsburg Car Company and the former bank, it's dark. So it really is problematic from just past the township building going east. But the rest of the village probably could make the 1,000 feet work, because there's sidewalks in most of those locations, and there's streetlights in most of those locations. Some of that sidewalk's getting replaced because it's not in great shape, but there are sidewalks, and it's well lit.
And it's not always dark all the time either.
Okay.
Sometimes you're out about in the daylight.
Yeah, that's true too.
Okay,
So again, I don't know, do we need just a consensus or an actual motion?
I would maybe take a motion,
I
just,
mean, I would move that we go ahead and keep the 1,000 feet, and put the requirement on for pedestrian access. So recognizing that that'll work for some properties, and for some properties it won't. We'll have to keep, we're not gonna solve everything tonight, obviously.
and that'll be our that'll be our recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Second on Kent's motion. Bob, thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay, those in favor of that motion to amend this plan and kick it to the supervisors again? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. One more little cog in the wheel. Thank you. Couple more things before we wrap up tonight with some reports and agendas. Pedestrian facilities plan in our neighboring township.
So College Township forwarded their completed draft of a pedestrian facilities master plan that they've been working on for some time. I don't know, I think it started out as a sidewalk master plan probably back 5 or 6 years ago and has evolved into a more in-depth study. But bottom line is that this plan was forwarded to all the Center Region municipalities into the county for you to provide comments back to College Township if you have any. It does include a pretty comprehensive analysis of their existing pedestrian network and where they want to see future pedestrian facilities. I know one of the things they've also attached to this is a draft ordinance to try to implement some of the initial recommendations of this plan, which includes a pedestrian facilities fee in lieu. So if they have a situation where a developer doesn't want to place, to put in the sidewalks where it's difficult from a feasibility point of view, there's a instead of getting a waiver, the township could collect some fee in lieu money from this to then use that to develop pedestrian facilities elsewhere. So again, there's a link, a link here in the agenda item for you to access the plan, and there's also an online survey tool as well. If there's any comments you want us to forward on to the College Township, we can certainly do so.
I have not yet looked at the map. Look forward to doing that.
I've looked at it, not recently. And, although I definitely would favor what they're working on.
Yeah, we talked about it in two of our, three actually of our agenda items tonight, pedestrian walkways. Okay, other comments or questions on this item D? Okay, thank you. Let's talk about the agenda for next month. I know we have a couple things that are already looming, shall we say, and maybe some of us have some other things we want to just bring up as possibilities.
So the sign ordinance is coming your way. The supervisors talked about it briefly at their meeting this month. We did send it to the
Thank you for
solicitor.
coming. You're welcome.
And ask the solicitor to also review it for the content-based regulations. So you'll be seeing that next month. One of the supervisors is very concerned about illumination of signs, and I forgot to tell you this earlier. I got a complaint about the billboard on Bull Avenue because they changed their lights to LED lights and they're shining brightly in driver's eyes now. So that falls under all of that. And the sign ordinance is also from 1969, so it is very out of date. So you'll see that next month. Do we think we're going to have any plans?
No, we don't think so.
Do we have existing lighting regulations about signs? I mean, we allow direct lighting or backlighting or both?
I don't think we disallow any type of lighting, but all lighting has to follow the same regulations as the rest of our lighting.
I know that down the road at some point we want to revisit this buffer requirement that's been talked about.
So that is actually at the Shade Tree Commission level right
Oh,
now.
good.
They started talking about it this month. They had a great conversation actually Thursday night. They're going to talk again next month. They're going to invite some of the landscapers to come who've mentioned concerns. One of them actually did all the plantings at our facility to talk some more. The goal is that they would like to have some concrete ideas to present to you and the supervisors at the January joint meeting, because you'll all be together. And they have also looked at all of the landscape requirements within our subdivision and our zoning ordinance. And they have some recommendations for the subdivision side of things, of taking out specific species, looking at spacing, that kind of thing. Things that they understand because this is sort of their purview.
Okay. I know we pushed aside residential zoning review for a while, and you're kind of stacked up, or I shouldn't say stacked up, but you're back to full staff now at CRPC?
We are not. We did hire a planner for Patton Township, which she started last Monday, and we are still interviewing for the Half Moon position.
Okay.
So it will be some time before we're fully back to staff and
Yeah.
everybody's trained up and ready to go. So I can try to maybe have something together by next month.
Yeah.
Do what I can.
Okay, understood. I know also we had kind of put on hold the trainings that the Center Region was putting on for Planning Commission and other volunteers, which have been super helpful. Any sense of when those may restart?
Not for it being region-wide. I mean, if there's something that you would specifically like me to provide to you, I'd be happy to go ahead and do that. But in terms of the overall regional get-togethers, it'll probably be at least sometime next year,
Yeah.
just to,
Yeah,
till we're fully staffed and operating that way.
makes sense. Okay. And next month we we're selecting a
Oh, yes,
nominating committee.
yeah, we'll need to select a nominating committee next
Okay.
month. Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, there's zoning permits going around. I'll look at those when the things wrap up here. CRPC met twice since we have last met. We met on September 1st and October 13th. So I'm just going to report briefly on both of those and sort of meld them in together. Interestingly, from the borough, they're amending some of the downtown development overlay district regulations, or they want to, getting borough residents' input on that, probably rewriting the zoning so that there's a little less commercial intensity. They're predicting that will be the outcome of that. Time will tell, of course. Very interested to hear that Toff Trees West development has started in Patton Township. So think about going further west on adjacent to the bypass, if you will, and to the west of the access road that comes off of that. There's construction started. Apparently, or reportedly, it's going to be very large. We're talking a huge development, an enormous number of houses going, residences going in there.
That's why the bridge is so big.
That's why the bridge is big. Also, we did an overview, germane to earlier comments tonight, earlier items tonight, overview of the regional growth boundary and the sewage service area. It was last done in 2014. We had a overview presented just last week. It was really pretty interesting. We can pull parts of that out and send it to send it to planning commissioners. I'll follow up with you on that, Mark. I just thought that would be of interest to people.
Sure.
The Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, that we hear from George on his representation on the technical committee of that. It was interesting that they're undergoing a strategic plan now that'll run through this June, focused on the operations of that. Really important with all the infrastructure improvement, Investment and Jobs Act money coming into the area. They're expecting a lot of money to be available for infrastructure, roads, et cetera, and other infrastructure, and they want to make sure that we want to optimize the ability and make sure because we have representation there, of course, are operating as best as possible and being fully representative, because those are important decisions and a lot of money that will affect life around here. So there's a lot to swallow at each of these meetings and understand, but they're really interesting and germane to the things that we're doing here, of course, in Harris Township. So, long report. That's enough for me. I did not get something from George.
He
maybe
sent an email today.
Oh, just today? Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
Good work.
Yeah, he sure does.
He does.
Yep. He's thoughtful and thorough and unabashed. Bob, Spring Creek Watershed Committee?
We had a meeting in September, and just FYI, those meetings are basically primarily informational. A lot of it's informational, and so we had that meeting was Walnut Spring wetland that was reconstructed or constructed. So we reviewed that. One of the things that is going on is that we're moving into kind of an operational phase with the Phase 3 water working group. And that committee we're working on committees, subcommittees, and the formation of subcommittees, working on governance, and we have our third meeting scheduled for October 26th. So there is activity in the group, there is a lot, so
Okay, and we, of course, heard from official map earlier.
Recent actions by the Board of Supervisors. Amy?
So a couple of things. We had a joint meeting on October 4th with Potter Township and their residents to gather feedback on the State College Area Connector project. We released this afternoon our statement on that connector project. We oppose a limited access superhighway being built through this corridor. We pointed to the Route 41 project in southern Lancaster and southern Chester counties, which is very similar to this area, land area wise, where they had proposed a limited access superhighway and instead built a four-lane divided highway. So we are going to try to rattle cages. We feel pretty strongly about the fact that the project's not being planned well. We called out the lack of transparency from the state in terms of they're not saying how they're weighting the criteria within the Pell report. Also, there are residents, and this was probably the hardest thing to hear at the meeting with the residents in October. There are residents that stand to lose everything they own. They will lose their homes, they will lose their farms, they will lose their businesses. Several of those residents got up and spoke at the meeting, and one of the biggest things we said in our statement today is you're dragging people along and they can't sell houses now, they have no property values right now, and it's not fair. So we've sent that statement all around. We've sent it to Senator Corman, Representative Benninghoff. We'll send it to the two candidates for Representative Benninghoff's, the new district. We're going to send it to the county commissioners. We sent it to all the local elected officials. Please go to the meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. I know some of the supervisors plan to go. We hope the residents are out in force at those meetings. And the next stage of this Pell process is the NEPA, the environmental review. Our understanding of that is that if they get enough pushback, they can send this thing back to have it looked at again. So let's make it a goal to make all the noise we can to try to get it rethought about and reconsidered. We certainly understand the safety concerns. We certainly understand the need for the road. We just think a context-sensitive road, which is something we've been saying since I think I got here in 2005, is what they should do. And what they're giving us is not a context-sensitive road. It is a limited access super highway, and there is no need for that in Harris Township.
No, that's what PennDOT is really good at building, right?
Yeah, they're not so good at the creativity. And one of the other things we said in our statement was if you can do context-sensitive design elsewhere in Pennsylvania, and we could count like probably 4 other different examples, we just didn't want to put them in the statement, then how come it doesn't work here? And Route 41, my family lives in Kennett Square, so I travel Route 41 every year at Christmas time. Route 41 has the dips and the hills and trucks and all the things. It runs from southern Lancaster County to Wilmington, Delaware. It is a 22-mile stretch of road that is very similar here to here, and it has the little villages and things in between. And PennDOT went back because they got pushback from the community when they wanted to put in the limited access superhighway, and they redesigned it. So if you can do it there, you can do it here.
So left turns, I'm trying to visualize how that.
They put in roundabouts in that corridor and did some other things to minimize left turns. One of the things the supervisors talked about was if you've traveled out to Pittsburgh, that section of 22 through Cambria County that they recently, before you get to Blairsville, that they had within the last 20 years made into a 4-lane. There are little jug, like the Jersey jug handles, what we were calling them, to get people to make the left-hand turns. There are other ways to crack this nut. They just don't seem to want to look at them. They just seem to want to shove in a highway that matches the bypass.
And PennLog did an article in it was in Harrisburg Patriot online. He talked about this and how they not let this situation, but another situation there in Harrisburg where they just completely wiped out neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And then you talk about the destruction of lives and stuff. You go, come on, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, and it's gut-wrenching. The one gentleman who spoke at the meeting on the 4th, he got up and said, you know, I live in a home that's a $500,000 house. I have a 2% mortgage.
Right.
So PennDOT's going to buy me out and relocate me, and I'm going to have a 7% mortgage, and I'm going to be underwater then.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to lose everything I've worked for.
And they had a number of stories, exactly the same thing in the Harrisburg area, where they're putting highway through and they're pushing it through without any type of consideration for what they're doing to people. It's goofy.
So we would just encourage you all to please share that statement with people that you know, please go to those meetings. We need to rattle cages because there are really no winners in any of this right now.
It's a really well-crafted statement, and
Yeah.
and I think has a lot of potential to be a powerful mover in the decisions here. Let's trumpet it as much as we can.
And then just two other things they did. They approved Alex's Proscape Phase 1 final land development plan back in September, and they approved the amendments to the on-lot sewage management ordinance for non-building waivers. So things that you had passed on to them.
Yep. Okay, anything else here tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.